want that girl cause she want me, cause the cash on me. Yeah, you know she capping on me. Dreadlock that cap on me back then.
In 2015, I managed to land my dream job as manager of this really old rustic pub. It was the kind with stained glass windows, ornate bar fixtures, the works. But it was bought up by this big brewery company not long after, and they ended up cleaning house. So within 6 months of getting my dream job, I'd lost it again. I was desperate. I had rent and bills to pay, so I was ready to work just about anywhere, doing just about anything, for any money at all, really. So I ended up getting a job in this 24-hour off license in the middle of town, and it was my job to work the night shift, 8 p.m. until 6 a.m. This place was really busy too. Had a cash machine inside, sold really expensive bottles of premium booze, and was mostly a cash business. It was the place that pretty much every single person who went out to drink and wanted to carry on drinking when the bars closed would stop off to pick up a few bottles before they got a taxi home. So I'm not messing around when I say we sometimes had like 7,000 pounds in cash on site by the end of the busiest part of the night shift. And well, I say we, I mean me, as I worked that shift entirely alone. So it's Sunday morning, about 5 a.m., and it's just before Christmas. The off-license had been extremely busy that night, and we had way more than 7,000 pounds on site. Like it had been Black Friday, which in the UK means that it was the last Friday before Christmas, so all the office parties had been in town, spending it up, and they pretty much all wanted booze to go home with, too. There were queues going out the door at one point. Seriously, it was one of the busiest shifts I've ever worked, including in pubs. So by the time it started to quiet down, I was ready to collapse. I remember just sort of resting my head on the counter at one point, thinking I could have actually fallen asleep right then and there. Then I hear the little beep at the door opening. And although I'd rather have flushed my own head down the toilet than serve another drunk customer at that point, I get ready to serve one more person. I look up, and in front of me is this bloke who seems alarmingly sober. Like almost everyone who walked in during those Saturday night shifts were rotten drunk, eyes all glazed over and bloodshot, slurring their words, but this guy is shockingly lucid, which was dead weird. He also keeps his hands in his jacket pockets the whole time he's talking. But it gets even weirder when he greets me by name. I thought he might have known me, and I just didn't recognize him, so I remain polite and say like, "Yeah, that's me. How do you know that?" Then he once again refers to me by name and follows up by telling me where I live. Again, I'm like, "How do you know that?" Only this time I'm also thinking that this is a plainclothes policeman or something, and I've done something wrong, like accidentally sold a bottle of booze to someone under 18, maybe even failed one of those underage tests the police try on occasion to catch businesses. Then he starts asking after my mom, then refers to her by name, and asks about my sister, again knowing her name too. He asks me if they're still living at such and such address, and gives their exact street address. I then apologize and tell them that I just didn't recognize him, figuring that he was an old family friend or something that I'd forgotten all about, but something about him is creeping me out all the same. He didn't once take his hands out of his jacket pockets, like to the point it was getting sort of odd. People talk with their hands all the time, and this guy's hands were like wedged into those front pockets on his jacket. That's when these other guys walk in, who also seem weirdly sober. They were quiet and deliberate in their movements, just pacing towards the counter and flanking the guy who seemed to know a little too much about me. Then really politely, the guy who seemed to know all about where I lived and where my family lived asked me if there's a toilet in the back of the shop. I told him there was, and he tells me to walk back into it, lock the door, and not come out for at least half an hour. And just to make it clear that he's not really asking me, he shows me that he's holding something inside his jacket, something heavy. Only then do I realize what's happening. They proceed to take all the CCTV USB sticks, wreck the monitors, break into the safe, rinse the tills, empty the shelves of all the premium spirits. I mean, they absolutely robbed the place blind. All the while, I was just sat in the toilet, wondering how that guy knew where I lived or where my family lived. As they were leaving, I heard footsteps walking up to the toilet door, and I started shaking hard. Then I hear this voice telling me that I did the right thing, for the sake of my family, that all the stuff that they'd taken was insured, that no one but the insurance companies would lose a penny, and it was them who were the real thieves anyway. I ended up telling the police that I didn't get a good look at the guy's face, and that I wanted to help them, but that I just couldn't. I told them that it all happened really fast and that they must have been professionals because I didn't even get a chance to hit the alarm behind the counter. They must have gotten away with like 10 grand all in all, and they didn't even take half an hour to do it, more like 15 or 20 minutes to be honest. And they'd managed to make sure that the one person capable of identifying them wouldn't say a thing to anyone about it. Like I can't even tell you how frightening it was that they managed to work out where my mom and sister lived. People who put that kind of work into criminality, they really are not to be messed with. And besides, it's just stuff, just material stuff. It's not worth losing your life over, and it's certainly not worth risking your family's safety over. No amount of money compares to your own mom's safety. This story happened a long time ago when I was about 7. I don't think I have ever told it to anyone, and it was a very short incident, but it's been in the back of my mind ever since. Typically, my cousins would babysit me and my sister during summer and winter breaks. They were about 10 years older than us, maybe 15 to 17 at the time. One day, about a week before Christmas, they took us to the mall to do some shopping. This is one of the largest malls in my area, and it was usually always very crowded, even more so during Christmas time. The day went fine, and they even bought me a small ball which I started playing around with by bouncing it on the floor and catching it as I walked. Because of this, I was walking behind them, distracted in my own world. After we had finished shopping, we exited through the main doors, which were the most crowded, and just as we were crossing the street to go into the parking lot, some guy, my guess would be about 40+ years old, grabbed me by the hand and started pulling me to a van right across the street. I remember the van very clearly. It was one of those conversion vans popular in the 90s with drapes on the window, red with thin gray stripes running through the sides, and van doors. One of the back seat doors was open and you could see a woman sitting on the driver's seat. She was about the same age as the guy, and you can tell that the engine was running. At the time, I didn't really know what was going on. I just thought it was weird in a sort of funny kind of way. Why is this guy grabbing me? As I remembered, I thought he just got confused and grabbed me by accident, thinking I was his son or something. So I shouted my cousin's name and she quickly looked my way. She was just a few steps ahead, and as soon as she sees me, she runs to me, quickly grabs my arm with both hands, and starts shouting as loud as she can. It wasn't until I saw her freak-out face that I realized that something bad was happening. As soon as she grabbed me, the guy just lets go, gets in the van, and they drive away. They didn't really tell the cop or call mall security. They were teens, so my guess is that they didn't really know what to do. They were just happy nothing happened. As I said, this was a very crowded day. As I got older and reflected more on what happened that day, I would understand more and more the severity of the situation. I wondered what would have happened if my cousin hadn't heard me calling her name within all that noise and multitude that was crossing the street with us. I wasn't even shouting out at the top of my lungs. I just called out her name rather calmly. So I was very lucky that day. But later that year, a kid was kidnapped in a local park. It was a very famous case that made headlines all around the county. They never found the kid, and I've always wondered if it could have been the same guy.